People who own many horses have many enemies. People who have many idlers live in discord and strife. Байдыбек Каршоули.
Неше жасар? 7 жасар. Тамаша. Құрметті көрермен.
Dear viewers, you're watching the 16th episode of our popular program. As far as you know, all our episodes are broadcast on Qazaq TV. Also, they are available on our YouTube channel. And it was on this platform that we received a plethora of critical comments and questions from true horse lovers and connoisseurs. We have specially chosen the most interesting remarks and questions which we will answer with pleasure in this episode. And we will only review indisputable scientific facts that we have collected while preparing the episodes. One of the hotly debated issues on social media is whether the Kazakh land is really a homeland of horses. I'm holding a book by Vladimir Kolosovsky, Horses of Turkestan, published in 1910. For many years, the author of the book has been collecting facts that we did not even know about. Kolosovsky answered a widely debated question in his introduction to the book. The total number of counted horses in the Turkestan territory is estimated at millions. All the customs and traditions of the local indigenous peoples are somehow connected with horses. There is every reason to say that the homeland of horses is Central Asia.
Тарихи іс-әрекеттердің әсерінен тіпті мұхиттың ар жағындағы Американың өзіне осы өңірден тараған.
Now, let's look at the statistics of that time. In Western Europe, there were 17 horses per 100 people. In the US, 24 horses. In Russia, 25 horses per 100 people. At the same time, there were 70 horses per 100 people in the Turkestan province. Well, even if we won't take into account the Botai culture, which was discovered, studied and recognized by the entire scientific world at the end of the 20th century, it would be obvious which countries have the largest horse populations, just by looking at these statistics. And it goes without saying that the Kazakh people had the most outstanding breeds of horses. In today's episode, we have collected a lot of historical facts. We will bring them to your attention in the next half hour. The main topic of today's episode is horse breeding farms in Central Asia. There are 4 billion farm animals in the world today. 1.7% of them, or 58 million heads of livestock, are horses. As a result of the world wars, the number of horses has decreased significantly. For instance, in 1930, there were 120 million horses in the world. But in just 20 years, their number dropped to 77 million. Therefore, one of the most important issues of our time is to increase the number of horses and improve the quality of their selection. As for our main topic today, the number of horses in Europe, the leaders of the horse industry, is estimated at 5 million. It must be noted that now in the world, there are very few countries which are not interested in breeding thoroughbred horses. Historically, horse breeding in England started only 300 years ago, while the process of domestication and selection of horses in the Kazakh lands began 5,000 years ago. Until the 19th century, in Central Asia, breeding and selection of thoroughbred horses was carried out using traditional methods such as herd keeping, horse racing, Kokpar, and hunting. The stud farm were built in the second half of the 19th century during the period when the territory of modern Kazakhstan was part of Imperial Russia. Dear viewers, did you know that in the Turkestan region there were about 4 million horses at that time? And it was in this region that the first stud farm had been built. In Tsarist Russia, people had a good knowledge of excellent qualities of Kazakh horses, and they were highly appreciated. When the first stud farm was opened in Russia in the 15th century, the Russians considered that only horses from the Kazakh steppes were suitable for breeding. Despite the fact that various types of weapons were already widely used in the 19th century, the army's cavalry still remained the tip of the military spear. Therefore, for the military, one of the most important tasks was to provide the cavalry units with the necessary number of horses. In Imperial Russia, commanders understood this perfectly and therefore turned their attention to the numerous herds of horses grazing in the Kazakh steppes. The book by Vladimir Kolosovsky describes in detail the results of the study of the characteristics of Kazakh horses. Their qualities and their endurance were estimated at 87.3% of the generally accepted standard. Only in the Turkestan region, 4 million horses were registered, which would have fully covered the demand in horses for the entire Russian army in the event of hostilities.
Орта жүзбенен кіші жүздің аумағын Ресей империясы өзіне қосқаннан кейін ендігі кезегі әрине қазақтың ұлы жүзі мекендеген аумақтарға келеді. Енді бұл аймақты қалай алады деген кезде.
After the conquest of the territories of the Middle and Younger Jews, the next target of Tsarist Russia was the region inhabited by the clans and tribes of the Senior Jews. To implement this idea, Zhetisu Cossack host was created, which consisted of about 50,000 Cossacks once deployed in the territories of the Middle and Younger Jews. The Russian Empire completely drove out the troops of the Kokand Khanate from Zhetisu and took this territory under its control, which also included the southern Kazakhstan, the cities of Auliata, present-day Taraz, and Akhmeshit, present-day Kazulorda, and the entire Zhetisu territory. The Governorate General of Turkestan was formed on these lands. In addition, it also included Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan.
Түркістан өлкесі деп атайды, және бұған қазір Өзбекстан территорияларда Самарқанд облысы деген солар негізінде Түркістан өлкесі және Түркістан генерал губернаторлығы деп аталады. Сондықтан да осы Түркістан атауы сол аумақтық бір атауға айналады.
A shepherd will tell you how he grazed horses. A merchant will tell you how many horses he had sold at the market. Folk wisdom. This is how our northern neighbors made their way to Kazakhstan. We will cite Kolosovsky again. He wrote, in the 70s of the 19th century, the Tsarist administration decided to select the horses of the local Kazakh breed, since Russian specialists were already aware of this breed. According to the author, Tsarist Russia sought to obtain high-quality offspring from local Karabair breed and not from English, Turkmen, Arab, or Russian horses, which were prevalent at that time. One of the first factories was opened with the support of Konstantin Kaufman, Governor General of the Turkestan region. 80,000 rubles were allocated from the royal treasury for its construction. Kaufman bought a plot of land in the Kabalanbek district near Tashkent, where he crossbred Karabair mares with Turkmen horses. Yes, you probably haven't heard about it. Kolosovsky's book clearly states that only Karabair horse was selected for breeding. The author says, Karabair is a combination of two words, Kara and Bair, which in Kazakh mean black and ancient. The word Kara in this case means simple, and the word ancient can be translated as primitive. Well, now let's talk about Kaufman's stud farm. The Konstantinovsky stud farm in the Kabalanbek district was soon closed. Kolosovsky explains in the book why this happened. I quote, "From the very beginning, it was clear that this whole business would not last long, because the Russians tried to crossbreed Turkmen stallions and Karabair mares in order to select purebred Karabair stallions, which were prevalent in this region. But this process requires too much time and expense, which is why the stud farm was closed." Pay attention to the words of the author. Turkmen stallions were crossbred with Karabair mares in order to eventually create purebred Karabair horses. But how is it possible that the Karabair horse descended from the Turkmen stallion? This means only that the Turkmen horses are Karabairs.
Ташкент жақта Қабыланбекте кони завод ашқан кезде жаңағы Kaufman, генерал Kaufman нағыз қазақтың жаңағы селекцияны өткізген жоқ. Өйткені олар бір нәрсе ұмыт қалды. Қазақ жылқыны тек қана үйірде ұстады.
General Kaufman, having opened a stud farm in Tashkent for breeding purebred horses, made a serious mistake. He conducted an absolutely wrong selection and incorrect method of breeding animals. Since ancient times, the Kazakh horses grew up in a herd, in the middle of a wild steppe, and thus evolved by traditional natural selection. Horses in the herd are always in great danger. They grow in pasture and learn to protect themselves from predators. Whether it be a pack of wolves or a lynx. For example, only a fast and strong foal will survive the attack of a wolf. The weak will simply be torn to pieces and eaten. Kazakh horses have passed through such a natural selection. Kaufman either did not know or forgot about it, and therefore kept the horses in the stable, and this harmed the natural qualities of the animals.
Құлын болып аман қалады ғой, тек. Сол ең бас қателік олар қазақтың жаңағы үйірдің селекциясını жасамаған, жылқыларды тек қана қорада ұстады.
Not all birds are nightingales. Not all horses are purebred fast horses. Kazakh folk proverb. After the failure with the Karabayrs, Kaufman was probably told more than once a Kazakh proverb: don't wear a sword wedged through a belt if you can't lift it. Well, let's continue. In 1878, Adjutant General Nikolai Ivanov developed a commercial plan and opened a stud farm in Auliata. According to Ivanov's idea, the stud farm was created to breed purebred horses with a view to their further sale. Initially, the general bought 33 Karabayr mares and several Karabayr stallions at the Konstantinovsky stud farm. From the very beginning, Adjutant General Nikolai Ivanov didn't follow Kaufman's method not to make mistakes. First, Ivanov selected only local horses. Secondly, horses were raised as was customary to breed horses in the Kazakh steppe, that is, in a herd, where there was one main stallion. Kolosovsky describes the results of the work of the Adjutant General as follows. After 2 years of work, Ivanov was convinced that he was right, because the mares successfully foaled and foals grew up fast and strong.
Жаңағы Аулиатада екінші кони завод болған, ол Иванов деген кісі ашқан. Сол кісі.
Then Ivanov opened a stud farm in Auliata. At the same time, the Adjutant General used the traditional method of keeping horses not in the stable, but in the herd. If we mention other farms where horses were kept in stables, then in comparison with them, Ivanov's horses showed excellent results. This is because Ivanov crossbred Karabayr mares only with Karabayr stallions. Ivanov selected only the hardiest horses from the local horses and, as a result, raised a whole generation of stallions capable of transporting heavy artillery over long distances. Ivanov's breeding method was incredibly simple. He bought large local mares from the local Kazakh people and crossbred them with Karabayr stallions in order to raise strong and hardy foals. In this regard, Ivanov has achieved excellent results.
Жақсы тұқым алған ақшаға, сөйтіп ірі айғырларды қосып, ірі биелерге осындай тұқым алып жүрген. Сол кезде осы кісіде ғана жақсы результат болды. Өйткені ол таза Қарабайырдың ішінде селекция өткізген.
Another stud farm on the land of Auliata was founded in 1889. It was founded on the area of 1,160 hectares by horse breeder Vasily Maslov. This plant supplied the Russian army with horses suitable for service in the artillery. Despite the fact that the farm belonged to Colonel Maslov, in fact it was financed from the Russian state treasury. The total number of horses suitable for service in the artillery was 200 heads. During the same period, a stud farm of Said Gani Saidajimbayev had been operating not far from Tashkent. Horses at this farm, similar to Maslov's factory, were kept in stables and in a herd. Both farms were supposed to supply especially hardy horses to the Russian army. This was their common mission. Why were our Kazakh horses strong? This is because they learned to survive while still in the herd. Herd life and their relationships inside shape the way in which a horse understands the world. Indeed, at that time the Kazakhs moved only on horseback. The entire life of the Kazakhs was associated with horses. First, they set off on a long journey riding hardy stallions. They moved from pasture to pasture on horseback. Even all Kazakh national sports games like Kokpar, and hunting are associated with horses. At the same time, there was a natural selection of animals. Only the strongest and most powerful stallions remain in the herd. Secondly, the main force of the Kazakhs during the war was horses. Even military campaigns were a kind of selection. Well, in peacetime, only a horse that won baighe and was distinguished during Kokpar, who was capable of traveling long distances, who was frisky, hardy, and useful during the hunt, could leave his offspring. At that time, the most important thing for Kazakhs was physical capabilities of horses. No one cared about their color and beauty. Our ancestors had many horses. Therefore, they had an opportunity to properly conduct selection and breeding of these animals. The Russian Empire knew about this fact. After Russia's colonization of the Kazakh lands, Russian governors were aimed to breed hardy horses, selecting local Karabair horses, since they were best known for their qualities. They could travel long distances tirelessly. They could survive in the most severe climatic conditions. They were an excellent choice for horse riding. It was the Karabair horses that the Kazakhs rode to war and on long campaigns. And in peacetime, they organized baighe and Kokpar competitions. All this contributed to the proper selection of our horses. A worthy horse descends from a good mare. A beautiful piece of art is created by a good artisan. Kazakh proverb. It should be reminded that stud farms were built on the Kazakh land for the cultivation of especially hardy horses suitable for service in the artillery. And these were horses with outstanding characteristics. Another interesting fact is that Kolosovsky wrote in his book that all these farms acquired mares exclusively of the local Kazakh breed. And as you can see, the result is good enough. Now let's move on to another type of breeding at the stud farms. This method was realized by the German diaspora near Auliata. German colonists living in a mountainous area 96 kilometers from the city used various techniques for breeding purebred horses. There were 96 horses in the German settlement. Each family allocated money to buy local Karabair mares and a stallion. The purchased mares were divided among families, approximately 8 to 15 mares for each house. The only stallion was kept in special conditions separately from the mares. People took special care of the stallion. He was taken in turn to each farmstead. Then the nearest stud farms of Ivanov and Maslov began to rent the stallions. Reading about the Germans who were engaged in horse breeding, you can't help but smile, because the German colonists specially hired Kazakh grooms for work who knew how to handle horses correctly and could deal with the most difficult issues related to their breeding. In general, in 1870-1880, many stud farms were opened on the Kazakh lands, but only a few of them can be considered successful. Many stud farms were closed for one reason or another. Imperial Russia even built a horse farm on the land of the Turkmen for breeding the Turkmen horse breed, but unfavorable landscape did not allow them to fully realize their business. A real purebred horse will not stop until it wins. Folk wisdom. Well, now let's return to the question that sparked hot discussions in our program. Let me quote exactly the comment left by a subscriber to Qazaq TV's YouTube channel. You say that Karabairs are strong like no other horse. Then, where are they all? Only English and Arabian horses participate in modern races. There are no Karabair horses at all. First of all, we would like to thank the viewer for taking the time to watch our program and leave a comment. Secondly, yes, you're right. I completely agree with you. At present, Domestic breeds are practically not represented in the equestrian sports of our country. But here's another historical fact. A document cited on page 116 of Kolosovsky's book says the record time for running 20 kilometers by gear is 27 minutes 30 seconds and 30 kilometers 48 minutes 45 seconds. This means that the Karabayir horse runs 1 kilometer in 1 minute 37 seconds. Based on these facts, we can't assume that the Karabayirs were bad horses at that period. But if we revive the selection of horses in an effective traditional way, we will be able to raise purebred Karabayir horses in about 10 years. The Karabayirs formed the core of stud farms on the Kazakh land in the 19th and 20th centuries. The Kazakh steppes raised the battle-ready horses. For example, in 1941, 3,000 horses were exported from the western regions of our country. In one of the previous episodes, we talked about 2 Karabayirs who carried the gun of a combat artillery crew all the way to Berlin. This shows the incredible endurance of domestic horses. It is impossible not to mention the Olympic champion horse Absinthe, who was grown at the stud farm in Auliyata. We mentioned Absinthe for a reason. In the second episode, the Karabayirs, Kings of Horses, we have provided a lot of evidence that English, Arab, and Turkmen horses are descendants of the Kazakh Karabayirs. There have been many comments on this issue on the internet. Most of them are dedicated to the arqılы. All the splendor of modern arqılы horses is that they have a high croup, a long neck, and a slender head. You look and rejoice. If you want to buy such a horse, then you must be ready to give a lot of money. These horses inhabiting the Karakum Desert first attracted the attention of the Russian Empire in the second half of the 19th century. At that time, these horses were simply called Turkmen, but these were the horses of the adais, which Turkmens at one time began to raise for breeding and selection. The name of the horse breed, which is now already a brand, the word arqılı came to use only in the 40s. Before that, they were simply recognized as Turkmen horses, and they all descended from ordinary Karabayirs. Kolosovsky tells about this in his book. The page 111 of the book Horses of Turkestan says that the Turkmens arrange horse races at weddings and various celebrations. At the same time, it is indicated that the distance of these races was only 1 to 2 kilometers, and their maximum length was about 12 kilometers, and only 5 horses participate in the races. And basically, there are only 2 to 3 horses. In his book, Kolosovsky also mentions the Kazakh Bayge and compares the races. According to the author, horse games are perfectly organized and are an integral part of the life of Kazakhs. The average length of the race is from 25 to 40 kilometers. Sometimes it is even longer. Approximately 30 horses participate in a race.
Turkmen Қазақтан ғана алып жүрген жылқыларды. Құлыннан, тай кезінен алады, ең арзан кезде. Жаңағы адайлар жем жақтан, жем өзенінен
At that time, the Turkmens bought horses only from the Kazakhs. When men from the Adai tribe came to enter the Jem River, they bought horses to sell them in local markets. But the Turkmen, due to the natural specifics of the region and financial situation, could afford only 1 horse in a family. There was not enough hay and special feed. Therefore, the horses from an early age were fed with ordinary bread. If a stallion could digest it, then he was fed with an additional tail fat. The horse was always hand-fed. That is why the Turkmen horses did not stand out for their body weight. They had a thin neck, they were lean and tall, really beautiful. In addition, the Turkmens raised their horses in a special way. A dungeon called zindan was dug in the ground. A horse was lowered into it. Then neighbors came and started shouting at the animal, throwing small stones at him. At that moment, the master appeared and began to feed and water his horse. Naturally, after such stress, the horse trusted only his owner. Thus, the Turkmens raised their own horses for everyday life and hostilities who were truly loyal. The Turkmens knew a lot about this.
Сөйтіп, анау ат тек қана бір адамға адал болады. Бір адамды ғана таниды. Сол нағыз соғыстың ат болады. Сөйтіп, түркмен сосын сол атпен күн көреді.
Kazakhs suggest horse breeding and selection in two stages. The first stage is natural selection in the herd. The second stage aims at training and taking care of an animal. Of course, the beauty and natural strength of a fast horse, argemak, are determined by his good genetics passed on from his parents. For many centuries, Kazakhs have developed a selection algorithm for horses of the Karabayir breed. A 1-year-old foal is supposed to be saddled. At the age of 2, he is released. Real training begins at the age of 3. A young stallion was tested during the races. Still, if the horse is well cared for and trained regularly, he will be a distinguished animal in the future. Kazakhs say, what is more important, luck or hard work? So training and caring for horses is the most important process in breeding work. This is a stallion Tori Alatau. He is strong because from the age of 2, he had been developing serious physical activity. These processes just coincided with the phase of active physiological growth of the stallion. From the age of 2, shepherds grazed a herd of horses riding Tori Alatau. Before coming to our club, Tori Alatau was fed only with hay. In fact, due to intense physical effort, the normal physical development of the horse was inhibited. For comparison, I will tell you about a horse, Adidas. He was also born in 2014, and so the two horses had a common biological father. If we compare both of them, Tori Alatau is about 150 centimeters tall, and the height of Adidas is about 170 centimeters.
Жануардың шекесінде төбелі бар, маңлайында. Осы Адидастың эмблемасына ұқсайтын болғаннан кейін.
We named this horse Adidas because it has a star on its forehead, similar to the symbol of this brand. We brought Adidas as a foal from Almaty region, taking him at one time from Daniyar Dauke.
Ат бұл. Бұны жаңағы жабағы кезінде барып таңдап алдық. Бұл енді ішіне қарап, өзі тұрқы биік болды. Сирақты болды. Қазақта сирақты дейді, сирақ ұзындау.
We chose this horse because he was much taller than the other foals. Having carefully weighed all the pros and cons, my son and I decided to buy this particular horse. We believed he would be one of the hardiest horses in Kazakh long-distance races. He's now 7 years old.
Бір тұжырымға келіп, балам екеуміз осыны таңдадық. Бұл қазір 7 жасар.
It is hard to believe that these two horses descended from the same stallion, were born in the same year and grew up in the same herd. As you can see, the differences are huge. This example is a direct proof of the above. After all, the main reason for the difference between these two horses is the method in care and training. When comparing the horses, it should be noted that both of them descend from the famous stallion Alatau. This horse, Tori Alatau, from the age of 2 passed heavy physical activity and therefore did not grow. In turn, Adidas was already trained as a foal. At the age of 2, he was released into the wild nature, and at the age of 3, he was already the leader of a small herd. Thus, Adidas went through all the stages of Kazakh traditional selection. Through this selection, we can get any horse for any purpose from the Karabayir horses. We can breed any beautiful, hardy, large stallion from Karabayir, but all this is a very painstaking and costly work that takes a lot of time. It's no secret that many farms and horse breeders are now trying to acquire horses abroad in order to raise and obtain purebred horses. However, even professionals do not always get the desired result. In this regard, based on the example given above, we want to say that when growing a fast and hardy horse, a lot depends on the methods of care and training of the animal. So, if you want to breed horses, think not about which breed to choose, but how you will take care of these horses and train them. Yes, Kolosovsky's work is a source of new knowledge. It provides an incredible amount of interesting information about our history. The fact that the Kazakh races were held at a distance of 40 kilometers and the fact that in each race 20-30 horses were evaluated and competed with each other once again shows that the Kazakhs significantly outpace other peoples in the field of horse breeding, selection, and sports training. And now when we talk about Turkmen horses, the very unique absinthe comes to mind. But now we're not talking about absinthe, but about his father, a stallion named Arab. According to some sources, he took part in the Ashgabat-Moscow cavalry expedition in 1935. The goal of the expedition, consisting of 30 horseback riders, was to cover a distance of 4,300 kilometers and reach Moscow in 3 months. Simply put, the Turkmen horses had to travel about 50 kilometers a day. I wonder where the Turkmens found such horses if the distance in their races did not exceed 5 kilometers, while only 5 horses participated in the baguette. Where did they even find 30 selected horses for this expedition, which were able to travel 50 kilometers a day without stopping for 83 days? Despite the fact that the Ashgabat-Moscow expedition was a large-scale event, there is almost no information about it. Here are the characteristics of the Kazakh Karabayir described by Kolosovsky. The Kazakh horse is versatile. If you look at him, you will immediately understand that this horse was not constantly kept in the stable, but was raised exclusively in the herd. He is hardy, strong, patient, hard-working, and fast. Here I would like to especially note that the Kazakh horse is universal. Yes, Karabayirs are really versatile. Choose the right mare and thoroughly crossbreed it with the Karabayir stallion, then settle their foal at the age of 1 and train it. At the age of 2, release the foal. At the age of 3, make him a stallion in a small herd. When the horse turns 5 years old, he will need a special care. He will need to be properly fed and trained. After that, you must definitely test your stallion at the races, ride him in Kokpar, travel large distances, take part in a hunt chasing after steppe hares. If your horse has endured all this, then he is a real stallion. Tulpar. All of the above is the authentic folk method of horse breeding. Only such stallions may be well adapted in a separate herd, and only such stallions could leave their offspring. Despite such a strong selection method, our ancestors had hundreds and even thousands of real argamoks, fast, hardy stallions. Well, I'm Akjol Taukan. Watch us on the Qazaq TV's YouTube channel and leave your comments. Goodbye, wish you good health, and see you in the next season.